It's Rosanna. I am about halfway through another kind of tenderness fabric painting, fabric collage, and I had been working on filming through most of the week, trying different things, and decided I was just having a hard time getting into it, and so I started over, which I don't typically do. I usually kind of go with my first whatever comes out first, but I thought what I made was too, I don't know, it was really sad actually, and I thought, well, how can I make something that has an element of comfort and also whimsy, because I've talked about that being kind of missing from my work this summer, and I happened to go up to find some fabrics to work with for this collage, and came across this little chicken that was made by a grand lady, and that seemed whimsical enough. I thought, okay, we can kind of collage a little fabric stuffy chicken, and I think that would be a really fun addition to kind of just a floral still life scene. I really wanted comfort to be a theme. That was already my thought for kind of the theme of this video, and then what happened was this morning I woke up at about 4 o'clock and came downstairs. I don't sleep with my phone. I just punched the side to see what the notifications were. I'm just working on putting a little watercolor paint on these fabric circles that are going to be my poppy flowers. And I saw that I had missed 5 calls from my brother just like 3 minutes earlier. And he doesn't ever call me for anything. He doesn't need things from me. He's my little brother, but he doesn't call on me to just, do stuff for him. So I thought, this is a real thing. And I knew that he'd had a scary thing with his dog about a month ago. Okay, and I need to give, and I will hopefully put, a trigger warning, but we're going to talk about a sad thing. I won't go into any specifics about what happened with his dog, but we're going to talk about the passing of a pet. So if you are not up to that, and I totally understand if you're not, then this is not a good video. I will try to just make it kind of as vague as I can be, while still kind of talking to you about what I want to talk about, because I was thinking I want to bring some comfort with this video, because of course we just continue to what we're seeing coming out of Gaza now, which we all were warned was in the process of happening and was going to be very soon the case, and has been happening anyway. That's all been in the news this week, much more than what in the mainstream news than what we've been used to seeing, and so I wanted to bring some comfort, and then this happened, and I had this feeling he needed my help, my real help, which I'm not normally like a person people call in an emergency, because I'm not particularly good. I've talked about, I have a lot of anxiety, and I typically freeze when, there's something going on. But I also have dealt with a lot of animal stuff here, because we have a lot of animals. So it's, although I'm not good at it, I have had to go through a decent amount of it. So I drove over there because my brother just lives half a mile away. I threw on some clothes and went over there to see if I could do something. And when I got there, I helped him to get his dog in the car, and I drove. We had to go up to the nearest emergency vet, which is an hour from where we live, because we're out in the sticks. Anyway, we got her there, but things were just not a good prognosis. It just wasn't good. And then we were right on the edge of the overnight vet, so then we had to go to the next daytime vet. They transferred her over there. So we took her over, and a couple hours in, we were standing outside, and just having some air outside the clinic. And he'd been kind of pacing around outside, and I had noticed there were quite a few people coming into the clinic, but I had noticed this one lady a few times in and out, and she was standing beside her car, kind of, I think she was waiting for her dog to be done inside, and or maybe she already had her dog out in the car, I don't know. She looked at Sai, and then she kind of, you know how when someone looks at you for a little longer than normal, or really holds eye contact, and she looked at him from near her car, and she said, are you, I can't remember if she said, are you guys okay, or are you okay? But she said, are you okay? And of course we said what people always, or what we've been trained to say is like, yeah, we're okay, you know, like, we're doing okay. And we said that, both of us kind of responded, yeah, we're okay. And she goes, she looks at us real hard, and she goes, you need a hug. And she was talking to Sai specifically, my brother specifically. And she came right over, and she just gave him just a long hug, like an intimate hug, and just really held him. And I can't tell you what that meant for me to see her do that, and to be so willing to meet him where he was, and share kind of that moment with him. And just sorry to snarf at you. Sorry, maybe I can edit that out, but you guys know my editing skills are limited, so you're probably just gonna have to deal with that snarf. And we talked to her for quite a while, because she was really friendly, and she wanted to be comforting to him, and she wanted to be with him and help him. And man, and she was just out there, like, I would never, I said when she finally, and she shared right at the end, she said, I have my first, I'm actually an artist, she said, and I have my first gallery, or exhibition in I have my art is going to be in a gallery tonight for the First Friday Art Walk here in Lincoln. And I was like, oh, I used to go to, when we lived in Lincoln look at me just dripping on well, you probably can't see that, but I'm dripping on the bottom of this. But I said, yeah, we used to go to First Friday when we lived in Lincoln. I would love to see whatever, you made. And I didn't get her name or what gallery she's going to be at, and there's quite a few in the art walk, and I don't know if I'll feel up to going. I would love to support her somehow, because I said to him after, she got in her car and drove away, I just said, do you know how tough someone would have to look for me to approach them and ask if they were okay? And I'm ashamed, but I recognized it immediately. I said, do you know how rough someone would have to look before I would go up to them and say, are you all right? Do you want a hug? Can I help you? You would have to be looking like you were about ready to just be off this earth. Like, you would have to look like you're ready to drop over. And I'm just embarrassed, because you might think of me as like a super warm person. I'm great at writing and being empathetic that way, through written language. But in person, I'm reserved to the point where it is a handicap. And I just thought, that's ridiculous. I mean, why do we act like we can't approach each other that way? Why do we act, and why, when people ask, is our response that kind of insincere, oh, I'm doing okay, I'm good? Like, most of us are not. We're just not okay a lot of the time. And I think we were insincere in saying we're okay, and she, instead of saying, okay, that's great, she recognized, no, you're not okay. And she called our bluff, and she sorry, I'm holding my hands together so I don't drip more watercolor on my on my fabric here, but I just am so full of admiration for that person, for being so open and emotionally available, and having, like we were talking about, empathy, having, just being in tune to the people around her and recognizing when someone needed to have that care given to them. I am just in awe, and I am disgusted with myself for being so caught up in like my own ideas of social norms and my Midwest ideas of being like a stoic, reserved, emotionally unavailable person in person. Now, like I said, I can write a tender email to someone, I can show care in that way, but if you meet me in person, I'm gonna have a real hard time like just giving you a hug, or I'm just telling you how it is. And I just was so touched by that today, and I thought it tied in to our themes of tenderness and care and compassion and empathy, and I wanted to share that with you, and I hope it hasn't disturbed any of you, and I hope that if you are someone who needs a hug, I hope there will be someone who sees that and can do that for you at some point in your life, maybe many times, but even if that could happen to you one time on a really hard day, and if you can be that person who does that for someone else, we all, if we could all be that person just a few times, wouldn't that be an amazing thing, and such an improvement for our world. So I'm going to go on now. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. But I just wanted to share it because I felt like it was such a beautiful, meaningful thing to have happened on such a hard day. And she actually told us, she said, there will be good that comes out of this, which I know is sorry, I'm having to put Pip down. I know is a platitude, and I know that can sometimes ring hollow or just, but it, I thought that just witnessing her being that kind of a person was an amazing thing to come out of this hard day, and it's a lesson I'm going to carry with me. Okay, I blew my nose, and I'm going to have a little tea. These are going to be our poppy flowers. I'm going to, you could either set these outside if you're kind of in a warmish, sunnyish place right now and it's not too windy and they would dry faster, or you can put them over a vent or something like we do with our spun cotton. It's just plain like a sheet like I was working with last time using watercolor, but you could use gouache or acrylic. It's just, there's no right way to do this. In fact, you could use probably a felt tip pen or marker to get these colored. I'm going to put these in my food dehydrator like I told you I've been using. Like 10 minutes in there, and they're all ready to go. Okay, I'll just mention one other thing because I had not meant to do what I just did for the intro, but I think that is going to be the beginning of the video. We'll see. I'm not positive, but I'm just mentioning. So there's going to be this arrangement and kind of a picture where I use this piece of letter for that kind of an ironstone picture look. And then this is going to be a little teacup down here. And it's going to have yellow little tea roses in it, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and paint these yellow, but I don't think I need to show that, but I just wanted to mention that I was also going to do that. And then I will kind of explain like our little chicken here and what I'm thinking with how the rest of this is going to be composed. So the last video we did what I called, and I know it was kind of weird, but I called it a tenderness. I called our painting or our fabric collage a tenderness because I had just discovered the work of Isabella Ducrot, and she does what she calls tender paintings, and I just thought that was so beautiful that I wanted to tender paintings. So the last one was really very much a tribute to my grandma. And this one is going to be more a tribute to my grandlady and neighbor, Lucille. And she passed away the same year as my grandma did, and they were about 6 months apart in age. So Lucille was 99 when she passed away, and my grandma was 98 and a half. So I lost both of those amazing ladies in 2023. But Lucille, like I showed you, and I've shown you in other videos, some of the things that she's made, and some of the things that I was able to, save or, make my own at her estate sale. So this was, something that I just thought was so sweet. And I'm sure she made probably at least dozens of these. I have some of her stuffed cats. I have all kinds of little things that she sewed. And I think some of you recognized this chicken as something that some grand ladies in your lives had. And I would love to find a pattern for it someday and see if we could make one. But I thought we could we could make one, in 2-dimension as part of our tenderness. So that this is my grand lady Lucille tenderness tribute, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to use this piece of a toddler dress from Hilda Pollman's Things, one of her daughter's dresses. I thought that was a really cute aqua color, and I liked how it played with this other red, which is also another toddler dress. This is a hanky, a men's hanky. And then here I'm going to do like a teacup bouquet of little roses. Both my grandma and Lucille grew kind of those really old-fashioned rambly roses. They're yellow little roses like this, and they kind of almost grow wild, like you'll see them on old farmsteads where the house is gone, but there'll still be some yellow rose brambles. And they bloom in early, or I don't know, sometime in May. It probably depends on where you are. Anyway, that was my thought for this little bouquet here. And then I did a little background. I'm not sure if that was the right choice, but I just thought I would try it. Do it like kind of a grid. I don't know if it looks like, it could be kind of wallpapery. I don't know. I just thought I needed something up there, and I'm not sure that was true, but I went ahead and filled that in. And I'm going to stitch. I think I will put like maybe just a bit of glue initially to keep them in place, or I can just pin them on. I'm not sure yet if I will use any glue or if I will just do kind of the stitch around the outside like I did in our last tenderness. But anyway, I'm not going to talk anymore without doing something. I'm going to actually just get working. I know this make-along is a little even more disjointed than usual, but here you go with a supply list if you'd like to make with me. So I did ink in my lines like I said I might try to do ahead of time, like as the first step, and then realized, well, like with this one, because there's going to be overlapping layers, a lot of those lines are going to be covered up. So I did it, but I will probably have to go back in and add them if I want any of that India ink line to show. I will have to kind of add them towards the end. So I'm now just gonna, I think, work without sound and do voiceover, just because Nettie's home and I don't want her to have to be quiet. I'll show you one thing. Here are my dried flowers, fabric, that I was painting in the beginning. I want them to look like poppies, or kind of like poppies. If you want to add a little bit of whiteness in the center, you can either just like kind of leave it with less, pigment there, or you can go back in with a little watery white paint and just kind of bleed out a center. So I may lighten up a few of these centers a little bit. I'm not sure. And then these, I don't think I'm going to do anything to until I try to add a little bit of detail for them. Okay, I do like Aileen's brand stuff, so I saw this and I was like, okay, that might be worth having for particular applications. So I use Aileen's for my spun cotton for kind of a finisher, and I'm gonna see how this, because it says like It is a super fabric adhesive industrial strength, but it says, well, it says it's permanent, machine washable, blah, blah, blah. It also says that it dries clear and flexible, which I like the idea of that. Ideal for felt, denim, canvas, satin, cotton, poly, blends, blah, blah, and more. So it promises a lot. So I'm going to try that for the, especially for this paper, because I don't want it to get really wrinkly, and that's what I'm concerned about. But I also know I don't think I can just hold it on with some stitches, because the paper is really old. Looks like 1945, so let's see, 80 years old. I don't think that's going to hold up very well with stitches. So I'm going to try my glue. I mean, probably you all assumed this, but this is not, I talk about trying to use natural stuff. Definitely not natural, definitely toxic, definitely something I don't want to be working with or consuming. I don't mean consuming like ingesting, but I just mean like using very much of. So this is going to be a occasional use thing, and I will try not to get it on my skin. Okay, I am attaching this piece of a letter that's going to be our picture, our ironstone picture, with the super fabric glue by Aleene's. And will I use it again? I'll probably use this too, but I will probably not use it very often and just use it for really specific purposes. I don't know that I would purchase it again. I think it does a nice job. It dried very, very smooth, and it's very well adhered to the fabric. So, I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about the quality of the product. It's just extremely fumy and like chemically, and I just don't like to use stuff like that if I can help it. So I just don't know what to say. Like, it's something that I could see might be useful for certain things, but I think, like, now knowing how stinky it is, I would just make do with something that maybe didn't do quite as nice of a job. So that's my thoughts. And then I decided to add some blue watercolor to the background because this is dedicated to Lucille, my grandlady, and she loved blue glass. Her kitchen was all blue glass, and so I wanted it to have kind of that dreamy, cool blue feel. So I added that. Now this, I think, is one of the really fun parts of working with fabric and doing these collages, is that I have an excuse to go through what, I don't know, it's collections, but it kind of is a hoard of fabric that I took out of Hilda Pollman's house when we were cleaning it out. And so I never know what I'm going to discover. This is a little kind of small suitcase, valise or something, and it just had random stuff in it. It was older. Like, a lot of the stuff in this little case was quite a lot older. It was stuff that either she had worn probably in her early life at home with her parents, or it was maybe even like her mom's things, because this was like Edwardian era stuff, I would say, for the most part. And most of what I have from her are things that are from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when she had kind of a young family. So this had all kinds of treasures, like this little bodice too, like a baby christening dress, which is so beautiful. And I will try to remember that I have that and think of what I don't want to cut it up. I want to keep it as it is. So I'm thinking about what I might do with that. What I ended up using or finding that I wanted to use was an old just men's hanky. So it's kind of the unfanciest, most ordinary thing in the case. But it suited my purposes. And now I'm just going to cut out a few leaves. I'm going to do some applique poppy leaves out of this house dress, turquoise house dress that I think I used a little bit I used it for the big kind of pot in the last tenderness fabric collage. So I'm just kind of cutting out a squiggly shape, and I cut out, I think, about 6 leaves for 4 big ones and 2 small ones for this little flower arrangement. Okay, Okay, so for the teacup, I'm just cutting out this little rectangle. You know, the hanky had been folded into quarters, and so I just sort of let the way it was folded dictate the size and shape. It ended up being pretty close to what I had inked in for my little cup, so I just went with that, and I left one side kind of folded under, and one of the other sides has a hem, and then the top and left side are just kind of raw edge, and then I cut out a little handle, and here's my hen shape, which I kind of just tried to approximate what her stuffed sewn hen looks like out of that little baby dress that I showed you earlier. And then I cut out a little wing out of the same aqua color fabric, and I found in that little case I was going through, there was an old piece of like rickrack trim, so that works really well because there was rickrack on the original for the wing, so I'm going to use that to set off the wing. And then I cut out a little red piece for the comb, and I had painted some pieces of sheet yellow for the last tenderness, and so I just took a little piece of that for the beak and cut a little diamond for it. And then this is just me, because we are working, we're kind of going in and out here, but because I started halfway through with painting our poppy flower circles, this is just the actual process of cutting out the ovals or the circles for those earlier, and I'm not obviously going to show very much of that, just this little clip. I used a bed sheet, like I mentioned, or I hope I mentioned. It's one of Hilda's, and there were, I don't know, I'm sure I have dozens, and some of them were used and some of them were not ever used and just are in trunks, still folded like new from the store where she had just bought sets, I'm sure, you know, to switch out, and never got around to it. So I have probably a lifetime supply of canvases for fabric collage. I decided not to glue these parts on, the hen and the teacup. I'm just actually pinning them on, and I'm going to go ahead and start stitching. Now, the rest of this video, for the most part, is stitching, and I found that extremely therapeutic. I had this out all over the weekend, and I think I finished up stitching on Monday, but it was so nice to just have something that I could come to and work at a little bit, you know, for like 5 or 10 minutes or half an hour if I had it in the evening, over this period of several days, coming off of you know, this sad time that my brother and I had. And I can understand, and I have stitched in the past different times. I've done little projects, but I'm not a consistent stitcher. I'm not someone who always has like a stitching project, you know, that I can just pick up and work on. So I'm understanding why so many of you really enjoy that and find that helpful, and I can see how that I would have been helpful, you know, years ago when it was just more common and it was more necessary that women did have stitching projects. I can see how that could have been calming, and hopefully not, you know, of course it was also something that a lot of women just had to do out of necessity, so I'm sure it wasn't always therapeutic. Sometimes it was probably just another to do on your list, but I can see how in the right circumstances it can be a little escape from kind of our normal you know, activities. So I'm not a particular stitcher. I will show you I'll do a little close-up of the whole thing, and try to, you know, move the camera slowly at the end so you can really see what my stitching looks like up close, and it is very, very, very imperfect. And of course, I talk about it a lot. I try to throw off perfectionism in my creating an art, because I find that it makes the process more enjoyable for me. You know, I think others of you might benefit too from kind of, you know, giving yourself that freedom to just be less than perfect when you're creating. But like, if it just brings you so much joy to do, you know, perfectly even, beautiful stitches, then I think there's a place for that too, if you have the time to dedicate to it. I just don't ever want perfectionism to prevent someone from from doing something like this, from making something like this if you want to. So if you have a limited time and you just, you know, you really can't afford to spend the time it would take to do something perfect, then I think there is a benefit in, like me, learning to enjoy doing something in a not so perfect way, because I still very much enjoy my creations even though they're not perfect. Okay, so there's my little spiel that I almost always do about perfectionism. I should also say that this collage could definitely be done with minimal stitching or no stitching. You can still do a fabric collage and not do any sewing. You can just glue it on, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, now I had this really beautiful little scrap of lace. I don't know if it was part of a cuff or a collar for an old dress, but I decided I would sacrifice a bit of it for my teacup, which is supposed to be kind of a nod to the Remember Me teacups, or some of them say different things. Like I have one that says "Love the Giver." I have one that says "Forget Me Not." So some of you might be familiar with them. I'll try to remember to take a photo and put it in here of one of my teacups so you can see. But we both collected those, and I'm not going to stitch on the text of that, or I'm not at this point. I might have time to do that later, but I knew I didn't have time to to stitch on Remember Me and have it look the way I would want it to mimic kind of the way they have it printed on the teacup. So anyway, I'm not doing that now. But what I did is I watercolored that little piece of lace, and so that's how the flowers are now colored, and it was quite easy and quite fun. So I would say if you have something like that around to experiment on, it's a really fun little project. And then I'm just attaching the lace itself with some French knots in the centers of the flowers. I want to share, I want to make sure, I hope that I have enough time to share the excerpts of things that I've been reading this week that I think would really go well in this video, which is in this, second half is really about stitching and about how I think not only is it therapeutic, but I do feel like a connection, like as I'm working on this piece, this kind of memorial or piece to Lucille, I know how many hours, just countless hours she would have spent embroidering and sewing and just doing kind of handiwork like this over the years. My grandma did a decent amount too. She did a lot of quilting, hand quilting. So it does definitely connect you to those ladies, and now those ladies who are gone for me. I'm just deciding where to place my little blooms up here, but I probably don't really need to explain that. So I'm going to find the passage I want to share out of this book called Threads of Life, which is something that I listened to, I think, 2 years ago as an audiobook. I loved it so much I listened to it immediately again. And then I think I listened to it one more time as an audiobook, and then I ordered an actual copy of it. So I want to share at least one passage from that. And I did decide with my flowers to just do a little dab of my craft glue in the centers, just so that I wouldn't be they wouldn't be flopping off the fabric as I was working on. Every time I touch this thing, everything kind of flops off of it. So I just decided to go ahead and glue them on and let them dry, and then I would do stitching around them. Okay, so before I read from Clare Hunter's book, I actually do want to share just a couple quotes from an interview that Isabella Ducrot did with, and that was published in the Observer. Let's see, it was this summer actually. So she says, growing up, no bed sheet. Actually, this is the person writing, and then there's a quote by her. Growing up, no bed sheet ever went to waste. What once covered a bed would eventually be repurposed to scrub the kitchen or transformed into something else like a blouse. And then this is a quote by Isabella. There was a constant practice in which fabric, like other materials, was scarce and therefore subject to continuous transformation. I experienced all of this without being fully aware of it. That's the end of that quote. And then in many of her works, Ducrot invites us to reflect on the need for tenderness, care, and empathy, drawing on the symbolic associations of flowers which are long tied to rituals of offering, honoring, and adornment. Through their enduring presence in cultural traditions, flowers become vessels of emotional transmission, embodying both vulnerability and vitality. So I just wanted to share that because I thought that was so interesting, since I have been using these bed sheets of Hilda's, and as I'm adding some kind of tender ink lines to my painting. Now, I think the ink lines might be controversial among you. I think some of you might kind of like them. I'm trying to be really loose and, you know, like I talked about earlier, just very imperfect, like not worrying about smudges and smears. And, you know, if I get a big blob of ink someplace, I'm just embracing that. And then just, you can see I'm trying to hold my paintbrush very loosely and just let it kind of happen. So that's my nod to Isabella Ducrot, and kind of how I understand her practice as an artist. Okay, we're back to our little yellow, our Harison's yellow roses, and I'm just going to add, I decided to do little interior petals to look kind of frilly and soft and delicate. I thought about just doing stitches. I tried it on one, but I didn't like the look of it, so I opted for just, you know, painting some more of my bed sheet yellow and then just cutting out little petals to add. And I want to share a little bit of this history of Harison's yellow rose because it is so interesting to me. Here comes Grandma's bird clock. So let me pause. The woodpecker. It's a long one. Okay, all right, it's done. So I'm going to try to just summarize a little bit of what I read, and I'll link the article. Basically, Harison's yellow rose became known as the yellow rose of Texas, which is what my grandma would call it. But it was really Harison's yellow, and it was developed by a man, a bachelor, who lived in New York City in the early 1800s, and he was just kind of a garden enthusiast, and he developed a lot of different new flowers. And he developed this rose in New York City, in either his family's garden or one of his own. They aren't sure. It was, at that time, it was the first yellow rose developed in the United States, and it became kind of instantly popular. And it was quite, I was reading at the time, most shrub roses, or I think they probably came as like a slip, you know, in the mail, they went for 50 cents. Well, they were charging $2 for his yellow rose, Harison's yellow. So, but it was just kind of instantly a sensation, and it was very hardy, and it did really well. And so it just took off, like everyone had to have it. And they took these roses with them, even, you know, the settlers who were moving out west took them in the covered wagons, and so that's how they made their way to Texas, and became, you know, very ubiquitous there. But also, just obviously, I mean, I'm very familiar with them, and they were on at least 3 farmsteads in my childhood. Of course, Lucille's grandma's, and then the house that I grew up in, which was actually Lucille's childhood home. Okay, very sorry I had to cut off because Freddie, who was sitting with me behind me, had to have a hairball, and I didn't want to have that recorded. So she's fine. She had a little hairball, and she's better now. I don't know that I've ever mentioned that, but I did grow up down the road, not even a mile from where Lucille lived as our neighbor these last however many years. Down the road from that was an old farmhouse that her parents built in either the late 30s or very, very early 40s. And she and her 8 sisters were, or at least partly raised there. That wasn't their original home, because they were, a lot of them, born before that in the 20s and 30s. But she, at least her sisters grew up there, if Lucille didn't, because I believe she was the oldest or the second oldest. I can't remember now. But she came from, yeah, a family of 8 sisters, and she had so many stories. So I may share some of them at some point, some of them that I know, which I only know a tiny fraction of them. But I'm really happy with how my Harison's yellow roses turned out, and I'm glad I took a little extra time to do that frilly center, and I'm really glad I looked them up. And so do a little research if that's interesting to you. The thing about stitching is, and collage and all of that is, you can really start to get into it and get, you know, like, there's really no end, I think, to like the details that you could do. So I started to really embellish things, and I added some kind of, you know, double layers of petals for my poppies on a couple of them. Now, I kind of would have liked to have done it on all of them because I really loved how it looked, but I decided that could be added later, And also I was, it's one of those things of like gilding the lily. I think they're fine, just as they are with the single circle of fabric. And there's a point where you should probably just be done with something. And Isabella is not one to kind of overdo things. She lets things be quite spare typically. And so, I'm going to try to to not just fill things in for the sake of filling things in. I'm using this, I love this teal house dress for the foliage right now because it's the color of my new kitchen, or the kitchen is not new, it's just the paint is new. And I'm just loving having bits of this color in all of my pieces right now. And so I'm using this for all of the kind of stems and leaves in this piece. And I've just cut out little strips to attach as stems. And I'm just going to use craft glue to adhere them. There's nothing, I don't really need to probably talk through any more of this. So I'm going to find my passage in my book, Threads of Life, and share a little bit of that because she writes so beautifully about old textiles and this experience that she has in helping her husband's great aunt to take some things out of her attic, which just resonated so much with my experience of taking things out of Hilda's attic. So let me find it and share it. Okay, so these passages that I'm going to read are all from chapter 6, Connection, and I'm just going to kind of patch these pieces that I really like together. So like I said, they are helping a great aunt to clean out her attic. We go up to the attic. There seems to be little here, a few cardboard boxes of books, an old trunk tucked under the cobwebbed eaves, the acrid smell of mouse pee. I open the trunk. Neatly folded, each one obscuring the next, is a tightly packed trove of textiles. I bring them out into the light. There are damask napkins, their woven sheen revealing floats of flowers, a deeply fringed cream silk shawl embroidered in cascades of roses. There are half a dozen Victorian baby dresses, ghost white, their broderie anglaise ruffles still sharp with starch. They look unworn. I unfold a long, stiff apron with a red cross stitched to its bib, part of the regulation uniform of the First World War nurse. And then, okay, so she describes then finding this beautiful hexie quilt. We would call it a hexie quilt now, but it's made of hexagon pieces, which she calculated that there might be 6,000 pieces in this quilt that she finds. And so they take that and all of these linens, and she describes taking them home and kind of cleaning them up and boiling some of the stained ones, on the stovetop, and others she soaks. And then she says, for hours I stand at the ironing board and press each piece into the best version of itself that can be mustered. It is a ritual of respect, a kind of honoring of its makers, of women long gone. While I have no connection to them, they play a part in my husband's and our children's history. What they leave, I keep, not as commodities, but as keepsakes of past lives, the remnants of women's labors of love. And then, a little bit later, just a couple paragraphs later, many of us have textile keepsakes in our homes, rarely used, but treasured for their sense of connection to a person, a place, a moment in time. They are sensory and emotional triggers too precious to throw away. And then a little bit later, the textiles we keep demand to be lifted, stroked, handled. They literally keep us in touch with our past. Cloth softens with handling. It absorbs human touch and the drift of odors that surround it during its making: sweat, spices, perfume, wood smoke. Bury your face in a textile, and you can nose up the sense of lives far away and long ago. If it is an heirloom, it can transport you to a forgotten blend of family fragrance. Isn't that beautiful? The book is amazing. It's quite historical, and it covers just a bunch of different topics. It's all, of course, about textiles and sewing and handiwork and that kind of stuff. I hope some of you will pick it up or listen to the audio version. It's just quite beautiful and meaningful. I'm just adding, and I have to say, I hope someday to be as good a steward of my textile collections as Clare is of hers. I would love to get them all cleaned up and organized and, nicely kind of folded up in a wardrobe. For now, they're kind of as I found them. But maybe someday I will get to that. So anyway, I'm just adding, I decided for kind of the stamens, or for the detail of the center of the poppy, that I would do French knots, and then I would just do a little line connecting that French knot down towards kind of the dark part of the center of the poppy, and just make it look like the little stamens. I did kind of a mix of dark stamens with a dark brown thread, and some that were yellow, and I thought both were pretty. So just kind of mess around and see what you like. And then I'm just I'm just adding some finishing touches with my Jasper Stardust watercolor palette, but you could, you know, just use anything. You could use a little marker. This part is not necessary. Really, a lot of you would probably think I was going backwards here, because I'm really kind of muddying things up and making it look a little messier. And so I know that that's not going to be everyone's thing, but that's where I am right now, is just wanting to have that kind of messy and less structured look, and just not so perfect. And I really have a very imperfect I signed it very imperfectly here. It was quite blotchy. That was a little, I was so blotchy that even for me, I was like, should I put something over that? But I decided to keep it. Now, some of you, in my last tenderness for grandma, I included a quote that she said a lot, which was, "This too shall pass." And I typed it up on a little piece of fabric, and some of you asked how I did that. And I really just have a very, very old typewriter that I just slide a piece of fabric into. And then I have to hang on to it, because it doesn't really, it's not big enough to grip it. So I have to, and my typewriter is almost non-functional at this point, so it doesn't move itself as you type letter. I have to like manually move it, move either the kind of, I don't know, the thing itself, or I have to move the fabric or the paper. So you see me just like moving it manually here, and occasionally getting my fingers typed on. And then you'll see how this fabric piece was quite crazy. Like, it turns out very like all over the place, but I choose to see it as charming. It says, "Remember me, forget me not." So I've typed up two kind of phrases that I know Lucille liked, and I'm going to try to decide which one to include in the piece, or I may just have both and pin one up as I whatever I like at the time. Okay, I'm going to try to do some smooth kind of camera work up close, so that you can just get a better look of the stitching, because I wanted you to see how truly imperfect it is. You really, I mean, depending, I guess, on what you can be happy with, you don't have to just obsess over everything. Now, I also want to talk a tiny bit about a few things I didn't get to, because I learned a few more things about Isabella Ducrot. Well, first here, let's just say this. Let's compare our chickens. I think that I've captured kind of the spirit of her sweet little chicken. Then Googly Eye might have really captured it more. But I like, oh, and I thought this was really fun. Look, I didn't really intend this to be a pocket, and I haven't decided if I have a perfect thing to put in this little pocket, but I love that happened. And so I'm kind of just thinking of what maybe we could keep in that pocket. It could even be a secret thing in there, I don't know. And then when I had that, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cute if you were making an apron to have a chicken-shaped pocket? So I'm going to try to remember that I had that idea, because I really do want to make an apron, even though I have, I bet, 25 vintage aprons. I love them so much. But if ever, or I guess I could just add a pocket to one of those. Maybe that's what I should do. So these are just kind of random ideas I had as I was, and you're just, you're having to hear my random ideas. But I think maybe a few of you will also be excited to think about a chicken-shaped pocket. So I do love the little chicken. I added a few, I just glued in some just very simple leaves for our Harison's yellow roses. And I think they're very sweet. Let me see. I always have, when I'm doing flowers, of course, we all know that poppies are for remembrance. So these are very much to remember my brother's dog, Bella, who we have lost now. And also, I was just coming off of a week of losing our goat, Elsa, she came to us with she was one of our first animals. So we took in an old goat named Lily, who was beautiful and kind of a soulmate for me. And Elsa at that point was her very young, naughty, obnoxious companion. and also was a real pill. And then she really mellowed in her older age, and she she developed cancer like a lot of goats and sheep do, and it was not treatable, but we made her as comfortable as we could, and she was very, very happy up into her last days, and she passed just so peacefully. So that was good. That was a relief, because I had been concerned about it for a long time. So anyway, the poppies are to remember our sweet girls who are gone. And then the yellow rose, I love this complete language of flowers. Yellow rose, where is it marked with my hanky, I guess? Let's see. Yellow. Apology, caring, dying love, friendship, infidelity, gladness, jealousy, joy, love, platonic love, remember me, welcome back. So we'll probably go with remember me, and possibly friendship, but let's go with remember me for our yellow roses. And then I wanted to mention our grid background, which I will put in a couple of pictures of Isabella's stuff. Some of you might remember from what I shared last time that she does kind of this, these crossing lines, and just as, at the bottom of some of her things, or maybe just in her pot, she'll do crossing lines, or she'll include some fabric that is checkered. And so this is like a recurring theme, and I was reading, and it is because, she's very, very passionate about woven fabrics, and she talks about how if you hold, a piece, which I don't know if I have this little thing, if you hold the piece up to the light, you will see the little, you'll see each thread and how it's, the warp and the weft, and you will see the light shining through. And so she, I'll try to put in here, she's really kind of, I don't want to say obsessed, but you see the black and white checkered fabric in a lot of her art. She's even wearing a black and white checkered coat in several of the portraits that I have shared of hers. And so I think this grid is it's kind of bringing in that idea of the warp and weft of fabric. It's almost like, she's magnifying it. And I was thinking initially it was just supposed to kind of look like tiles or something, or just be a grounding sort of element. And I suppose it is kind of a grounding sort of element, but that I think is the symbolism of this in a lot of her art. So I'm kind of glad I incorporated that, because I really like that symbolism of just how fabric is woven together, and how the idea of weaving is very symbolic for interconnectedness of everything, of people, but of also humans and nature and all of that. I did want to show you. I'm so sorry that I didn't find this before I made my hen, because this is some of Hilda's fabric that was just in a drawer from an old sewing machine. It's like, it's older than this fabric, but wouldn't that have been almost perfect? So I might have to make another chicken with this. So I had to show you that. And then I also wanted to show you, I put remember me, forget me not, because those are both sentiments that are on the teacups that we collect. Here is one that says love the giver, but that's kind of the style of the teacups that we've had. I'm not close enough to grab the other one. Anyway, so I might pin this on, or I might decide to use this one under, and I changed it. Please, I hope I don't offend anyone. This is a Bible verse. It should say, under his wings you will find refuge. I believe it's from Psalms, and it was one of Lucille's favorite verses. She absolutely loved that one she just loved the idea, because she really loved hens. They had them when she was a girl, and she loved the idea, and she remembered the mother hens sheltering the chicks under their wings. So she just told me, I remember her telling me several times how she loved that image of God sheltering people in that nurturing motherly way. So I'll probably cut that one out, and I may use it sometimes on this, just pinned on as well. All right, so thank you for sticking around with me. I know there were some really tough spots in this video, and I'm sorry. That's just how my life went this time, and I hope that I was able to share it in a way that that was helpful and not harmful to anyone. We all go through this kind of loss, and we all have periods of grief. And in fact, I think we're all kind of, or a lot of us are in a kind of a period of extended grieving right now. And so I just thought this slow stitching project was a good way to kind of bring comfort and kind of combat those feelings that we're having right now, at least find some sort of outlet for them. So thank you for being with me. Now I am going to add on the end of this a little round of happy mail that has come to me. So many of you have been sending me super sweet things in the mail, and I like to share them here because I think it's fun and inspiring for some of you. So that's going to be tacked on after I say goodbye, just because I know this is already quite long. So I just appreciate you all so much, and I appreciate that you allow me to come here and encourage me to just keep being myself. And I knew that most of you would not run away from, I guess, an emotional video, or I felt fairly confident that you wouldn't. So I guess I just have to thank you for being those kind of friends and those kinds of people who aren't afraid to be real and to have emotions. I just think we have to keep, like we've been talking about, like we have to keep being tender, even though there are hard days, and a lot of times, the world in general can seem a little hard. I think we're still doing the right thing to be soft and tender and loving, and to bring comfort to each other in whatever ways that we can. So thank you for being with me today, and thank you for all of your support and kindness. And I send comfort out to all of you, and I wish you happy making. Okay, first of all, this amazing card came with some other things. Quite a few other things, but she didn't want me to really share. Anyway, she wanted to. She didn't want me to share how much she sent. She was quite generous, and I was like, wow. But she made this amazing card, kind of collaged, scrapbooky style card, and it has all of these fun elements with it. And she sent me some amazing books. She sent some things for Nettie, and she is the benefactress of my lovely new brushes that you've been seeing me use in this video, and the last one too. I think she got them off of Amazon, and I can't remember how many were in the set, but maybe like 15 or 20. Great range of sizes. Everything has been really lovely, and they seem really good quality. So those of you who have lamented the state of my brushes over the years can thank this friend from Minnesota, and I thank her very much too. Here's a little card from another friend who she sent a donation for the animals, which was so sweet of her, and a bunny card because she had enjoyed the little country bunny make along. So that was very sweet to get this Peter Rabbit card. Okay, this one is really interesting, and I love it so much. It is from a sweet friend who is, in fact, she was the one I mentioned when I painted the cabinet a couple videos ago. She's the one who had emailed to ask how I was and give me some encouragement. And this card is so clever and so sweet and fun that I was like, wouldn't it be fun if we could try to make one? And I don't know, because I don't see... and she sent a donation too, which is so thoughtful and kind. It doesn't have like an artist's name on it that I can see. Well, actually here is an HM, but I don't know what that's. So anyway, I assume that it's something that she maybe printed off. I'm not sure, but that got the gears turning a little bit. And each one of these you can pull out, and it's some adorable thing. So I thought, isn't this just the most fun idea? And also, like, the most encouraging little card to get in the mail. So I really hope maybe I can get to a make-along that's inspired by that. So isn't she? That's amazing. So that's really cool. Here is a card that was full of goodies from a friend in Wisconsin. And it just had all kinds of beautiful little bits, some fabric, tape, all kinds of beautiful things that she enclosed, and then a really, really sweet message from her. So that is always fun. And she even sent particularly Wisconsin-y things. I heart my Wisconsin library, so I really loved that she sent some things very personal to where she was. And then here is some stuff from a dear friend who stitches things for me at least once a year. I usually get some new thing to add to my collection of sweet stitchings from her. And she did an Annabelle cow and a donkey. I don't know which donkey I should say that is, because I don't want to pick a favorite, but isn't that adorable? And so she's a wonderful friend who lives in Washington State with her very handsome, clever 2 kitties, and she does all kinds of good things. But she, in her very little free time, which she has so little free time, she finds time to stitch for me while she is commuting to work on the ferry. So isn't that cool? And she also has the best taste in cards. Like, every single card she sends me, I'm like, that is the cutest or sweetest or most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So this was her latest one she sent, because we were talking this summer about we've both had trouble initially early in the summer with raccoons being very difficult to work with our gardens and planting and all of that. They were really working against us. She has opted for putting up a kiddie pool in her yard and just hoping that if she makes kind of a raccoon playground that they will leave her garden alone. So anyway, she sent this amazing raccoon card. I just think it's so sweet and whimsical, and I love it. And she sends stuff by this artist too, and I can't remember her name now, but she's amazing. I love her folk art stuff. It is so sweet. So anyway, that is from another good friend, and that's what I have to share today from the mailbag. Thank you all. You are amazing. You encourage me so much, and I just appreciate each one of you. And I will see you soon.